Welcome, new and returning listeners, to today's episode of the Black Business Roundtable. I am your host, Doug Blacksher, broadcasting to you live from the city of Diversity, Oakland, California, at 4 p.m. Pacific Time and 7 p.m. East Coast Time. Also, I had a call about 6 weeks ago from a brother in China who watches the show. So we are on every News Day Thursday. Hope you had a wonderful celebration of Memorial Day and remembered those that sacrificed for our freedom. Our freedom. Yes, our freedom. Here in the United States of America. One of those being Barack Obama Shaw, co-hosting here shortly with me tonight. Audience, tonight, we welcome back two more guests from April 2023. Dr. Kaia Niambi Shivers, founder, editor-in-chieftess of the Archivist and professor at New York University. In addition, we have author extraordinaire Rex Pickett, known and if whether you drink Merlot or not, you surely have heard of his book, Sideways, which became a cult classic, yes, a cult classic movie starring Paul Giamatti, Sandra Oh, Virginia, let me make sure I get this name right now, Virginia Madison, and Thomas Hayden Church. Well, hold on to your favorite reading chair as he is back with his Sideways trilogy. Sideways, the original, which was adapted into the Oscar-winning film. Sideways, Oregon, due in July 2024. Sideways, Chile, Sideways, New Zealand, and that was just released. This man is doing some outstanding things. Also, don't miss his murder mystery, Archivist, the Archivist. And you can also check out Sideways Wine. Our sponsor, sister who is on the move, have a beautiful home up in the Saliandro Hills. Address is 2351 Longview Drive in Saliandro. Looking for a new Bay Area home that has a beautiful kitchen scenic view. It is a ranch-style home in the Saliandro Hills, and that's right next here to Oakland, California. And it's presented by our very own Miss Tammy Willis. We all miss her soothing presence, our sister and show contributor since our inception, Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology and Therapeutic Thursday. We want to continue her dedication to mental health. As a mental health reminder for our audience, today, here are a few important resource numbers. If you're feeling stress, anxiety, lonely, don't go through this by yourself. You can call 988, the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. Once again, 988, the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. And it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Women looking for a therapist. Therapy4blackgirls.com. Once again, women looking for a therapist. Go to therapy4blackgirls.com. And men looking for a therapist, therapy4blackmen.org. See hashtag in show description below. All right, now we're going to light it up, audience. We got some great guests on today. We got politics. We got book writers. We got professors. We got it all here today. So let's get going. I'd like to ask our audience to please welcome back, running for the great state of California, the new governor to be, Mr. Barack Obama Shaw, currently running for governor of California in 2026. And his new political party is, now listen to this, a ring of truth. The Republicans and Democrats could learn something from that term alone. So welcome back, Mr. Barack Obama Shaw. Pretty soon we'll be calling you governor. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I love the sound of that.
Hey man, we've been on the show, we've been on the air for 3 years now, and I'm gonna be brief because our time is short, but we got a lot of action. We need to run out some of these politicians who they get paid and we get played. So on that note, what is your summer shaping up to be so far at pricelesspolitics.com? Thank you.
Well, right now, I'm just getting affiliated with all of the different youth organizations and nonprofits in the area, and just getting to know people, letting them get to know me as well, and just being down to earth, being the person like, oh yeah, I met him. Oh yeah, he's all right. He's not all right, but he's all right. He's a down to earth person and for the people. And that's the message I've been wanting to leave with the different communities that I've been speaking with. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a little hot this summer, but it's been a lot of fun meeting everyone.
On that note, audience, we want to dive right into it. And we want to also welcome to the stage, Dr. Kaia Niambi Shivers on the East Coast with us tonight. And instead of the Biggie Small Tupac fight, we are having collaboration, cooperation, not confrontation. Ha ha!
Can you? All right, here you go. Welcome. Well, cousin, I call you cousin Doug. I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm West Coast all day, every day. Okay, and I got family in the Bay. So, yes, I thank you for inviting me. I'm ready to rock and roll whenever you are.
Well, I'm going to be brief with this quick statement. We've been working with our teams in both the East Coast, border to border, Florida, down in LA. What we have got to do is unite our buying power and our political power and start supporting people who look like us here on the stage. And the only way we're going to do that is collaboration, cooperation, not confrontation. All right, let's dive right into it. For audience members that may be new, can you, Dr.
Kaia.
Okay, I'm still working on that, but I'm close.
Yes, you are.
Kaia, can you share what Arc Republic is? Thank you. Arc Republic is.
Arc Republic, yeah. Well, you know what? I call the insiders Arc Republican. Somebody emailed me for filth and said, I'm not a Republican. I was like, no, we're not talking about party politics. But Arc Republic is a media news site that I started in 2017 because I was tired. I've been a journalist for several decades, and I was tired of what I saw as partisan politics blocking news and information that people needed to navigate these dire times. And so I started Arc Republic as a way to give voice to stories and narratives and features and information that was missing out of the press, and also to push the envelope in terms of looking into matters that matter to us, but often get passed up or are not considered important. And so since 2017, and it's a website, and it's a multimedia website. So we have a lot to offer. We have print media, podcasts, photojournalism, We have short docs. So we try to run the gamut of being like this hybrid media space. And that's what Arc
Take it
Republic
away.
is.
Take it away, Mr. Obama.
All right, fantastic. That's amazing. And we want to follow up with you on the Black ranchers in Colorado and hear what's been opening up with that, because since last year, that's how we became connected with you in regard to that story. And we'd like to have an update on the Mallory family.
Yes, thank you, Brother Barack. Obama, I love saying that.
All right.
So in January 2023, Arc Republic broke a story about Black ranchers, a couple named Nicole and Courtney Mallory, who had moved to Colorado from Texas after Hurricane Harvey in 2017. In 2020, they bought a 1,000-acre ranch in a town in El Paso County, Colorado, Yoder, Colorado, to be exact. And from the very first day, they were met with vitriol from the predominantly white community. And for 2 years, they had experienced what we described as white domestic terrorism. So things like, and even to this day, they still have issues, which I'll go into. But in town, they were known as the Blacks or the N-word. They were surveillance. They were followed. Their animals on their ranch were killed frequently. Their property was destroyed. Their chicken coop was set afire. Particularly, they had a neighbor who was very nasty. She would follow them around. She would harass them. They would siphon water and electricity from their property. And what happened is that this was actually these townspeople and their actions were supported by several or a handful of local El Paso County deputy sheriffs who began to participate as well in the surveillance, passing by their house. They have guns pointed at them. They had their signals and their cell phones blocked. And by the time they got to us, they had lost about or over $250,000 trying to save their ranch. As well, they had a ranch hand who worked on the property who was murdered, not on the property, but murdered in town. And actually, the sheriff's department had closed the case. And so several things happened when, right before I released the articles. One, I went to Black Farmers Index, which is our sister organization, and I asked them to put out a call to Black farmers to help these Black ranchers. And then the next day, Arc Republic, we released stories on it. And the response was crazy. Hence, this is why we're here now. It became an international story, calling for officials to step in and do something about what happened. As well, I want to say this. When I was interviewing the Mallorys, they also found out that they had, Mr. Mallory had criminal charges. Miss Mallory is also served. So they had criminal charges. So they had to fight a case. Their land was being damaged. The county commissioners, from what somebody in the NAACP who eventually stepped in after the stories were released, said that there was even perhaps county commissioners trying to steal their land. When we released the stories, I cannot explain to you or describe to you the amount of racism and violence that was on our social media pages, on our website, from local townspeople. And you don't know who all these people are, but in my conversations with the Mallorys, they identified several local townspeople, and that still goes on today. But the charges were dropped, and the Mallorys were able to raise about $230,000. It went to security. So we reconnected with the Mallorys several months ago, and so there's like a bittersweet update. The sweet part of the update is that the people, the support was so outpouring that they were able to get security. Military veterans stepped in because Nicole Mallory is a Marine Corps military vet. They also actually started feeding more people because that's what they did a lot with their food. They're very philanthropic, and they're having a Juneteenth celebration coming up on the 15th. And that is to express gratitude for the people who helped. And so there's a lot of things that are going to happen. There's a chef, there's celebrities that are going to come. They're going to do a ride in the town. And so that is the bright side. Now there's a bitter and a dark side. You know what happens, Brother Obama, when Black people start doing well? What happens? This is an old narrative. The trolls, the racists come out, and they come out harder. So since they are up in operations because they sell lamb, beef, cattle, pork, eggs, they're starting to do produce. The white terrorists, I'm calling them that, have amplified in them the harassments and the surveillance and the bullying begin to escalate. I was just on the phone with Miss Mallory earlier, and she said that somebody had painted their post with tar, which can poison the cows. People ran up on them. Them being called the N-word, her being called a bitch out in public is the norm for them. And so as they approach this Juneteenth event, the pressure is escalating. But let me tell you this. Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw Productions, you know Jordan Peele, he made the movie Get Out. He also made the movie Nope. Picked their story up, and it's going to be part of a documentary. And from what I understand, I'm giving y'all exclusive. I even said this on my thing. I'm going to say this. While they were in production, somebody called the cops on the Jordan Peele crew. So the police ran up on them because they said there were some Black men with guns on the property. So this is just kind of give you an understanding of the Mallory. So we're still reporting it. We're still covering the story because this is so important to understand the experience of the Black farmer today.
Well,
wow.
I appreciate you sharing that with me and us here on the Black Business Roundtable. As we all know, we're in the 21st century and racism is still alive. And for this to be happening down, I remember when we first talked about it last year, I was shocked. And audience, we want to thank the doctor here for picking the story up and pushing it over the goal line. So continue your great work. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Dr. Shivers.
I want to thank you too. And I want to thank you because you are actually one of the few publications that acknowledge that the story came from Ark Republic. We were essentially whitewashed out of the media in terms of us covering it. Even other Black publications, when we reach out to them and say, hey, we're a Black woman-owned publication, could you at the very least credit our pictures that you took from our site? Nothing. So not only did you acknowledge that we reported it, but you followed this even in the midst of all the vitriol. This is not an easy story. These people are 24/7 are on alert. And as a result of them being, El Paso County Sheriff's Department held a press conference and they said that Ark Republic did not contact them to get their side of the story, which we did. And so they were saying that, our stories were causing officers' lives to be in jeopardy because we were spreading lies. And all we did was tell their truth. So I was hacked. My website was hacked. We were unable to raise money. So I want to thank you so much because small Black news and publications matter. Thank you.
You got to thank my producer. I got to give her most of the credit. She stays on top of these types of stories, including the one that gentleman is coming on, Rex Pickett. But I want to thank our producer. We call her Mrs. X. She's doing a magnificent job. And you keep doing a great job. We're going to get one more question in before our special guest gets here, including the all-star panel. We have a soonly going to be elected governor. We got a sister is a pit bull on ill-gotten gain from bad actors. So your podcast episode with Sharice Janae, PhD, and Jasmine Crockett, AOC. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, hashtag perjury Taylor Greene. And we know who she's a mess down there. We can thank Brother Marcus Flowers for that hashtag as he ran against Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia. Was out of this world. I mean, it was great. I think you were right. She messed up. Oh, she messed around and found out. And you know what that really means. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I said something like she messed with with the wrong person on the right day at the exact hour in terms of Representative Jasmine Crockett. So I first want to say Dr. Sharice Janae is a homegirl. She's actually from the Bay Area. And so what you see, our conversation is very genuine, is very organic. And she's very brilliant political scientist. But we covered the Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jasmine Crockett, and I must put in the AOC Ocasio-Cortez piece in there because we wanted to talk about something that actually I started covering back in early 2000 is how Black women in power are often framed by the media, how they are looked at or perceived by their colleagues, and the level of disrespect that they receive. Marjorie Taylor Greene's was just very what she did, what she put on display was just very explicit. But it's something that Black women who are elected officials often talk about, being assessed for their looks, how they talk, and things that have nothing to do with their jobs and the effectiveness that they have in their communities and their representation. And so what I wanted to do in that podcast, one is that I strive to kind of tell a fuller story. And if you go to our YouTube page, Arc Republic's YouTube page, you actually will see about 15 minutes of the exchange as opposed to the 10-second clips that often frame Representative Jasmine Crockett as this unhinged, attitudinal chick, who's very disrespectful. But what you will see in the full exchange is that people were attempting to course correct Marjorie Taylor Greene, who refused, really for over an hour to apologize and had insulted even AOC. And so we try to cover these types of issues to talk about the systemic things that happen with it, and instead of just kind of hyper focusing on this exchange. But Marjorie Taylor Greene represents an attitude towards Black women, but also a type of agenda that we are seeing in electoral politics that is not only very dangerous, but it also, if we do not challenge, and I think really talk about how we can be better government, there will be more Marjorie Taylor Greenes in office. But I'll tell you this: she will never run up on Representative Crockett like she did, ever again. Okay. She got gathered, as we say, in the hood.
Well, I believe our next guest is backstage, and one of the things I want to say, Dr. Shivers, and I'm going to get ready to start saying this, Governor Barack Obama Shaw.
All right.
We need to keep the good fight out. So, audience, let's welcome back to the Black Business Roundtable and friend of the show, author of the acclaimed Sideways, Rex Pickett, discussing the latest book in his tetralogy, Sideways New Zealand, just released. We also hope to see Rex Pickett at local venues. And let me tell you something, I can't wait to meet you in person because my producer, she has told me so much about you and reading some of your books. You have a magnificent perspective of life. So some of the local venues we know and frequent here in Oakland, such as Friends of the Show, Gathering Spots, hashtag Hopeful Noir Wine Shop, hashtag Kinfolks. We may not get, Kaia, Can you start off with the first question with this magnificent author?
Wow.
Well, I'm gonna privilege from a writer, to a writer. Your career far exceeds mine. One, so I want to thank you, for coming on, and I want to know, yeah, I want to know, where are you in your creative headspace? I know this is totally off script, but as a person who creates, like, where are you right now? This is, I know it's earthy, so excuse me.
No, Kaia, I mean, I'm not, I'm not famous, I'm just out there writing, or as I said the other day, I'm just a carbuncle on the anus of Merlot. But I know Doug said I can say whatever I want.
Yes.
So Sideways New Zealand just came out, and I was in New Zealand. I took my two iconic characters from Sideways, Miles and Jack. So I write in first person from the point of view of Miles, Paul Giamatti in the movie. And so they're really semi-autobiographical in many ways. And so, I'm excited about Sideways New Zealand because I went there and I lived it. And I lived it in the winter. And I have to find a story. I don't just go to these places and wine taste. But because people have really enjoyed these characters and there hasn't been a sequel movie, which that is ridiculous, but we won't get into that because that gets in. Well, now we're going to go back to politics. But I just signed a post Sideways New Zealand trilogy, and I'm trying to ideate the next book. And I actually went to Spain and it was going to be Sideways Spain, but I wasn't feeling it for reasons I'll spare you. It just kind of the infrastructure really wasn't there, so I escaped. I saw my play though, Sideways, a play in Riga, Latvia. It's a huge hit. They loved it, and I don't speak Latvian. It was a wonderful. My play's been staged a number of times. So the characters have a certain, at the risk of immodesty, certain timelessness to them. I wrote that book over 20 years ago. The movie came out 20 years ago this October. So we're doing a lot of Sideways 20 events. I got so many events coming up, I can't even keep track. I'd have to go to my calendar. And but in the midst of that, to answer your question, I'm trying to ideate this next novel, and I'm up here in downtown Napa, not to be confused with Napa Valley, even though I'm next to it. I'm not bourgeois. I'm down here, in a transitional, wonderful area, and but I think it's just all my books, and I've written and directed 2 movies too. They're all road novels, road movies, and so I think it's just going to be me and somebody else get in a car and up here in Napa, and just head all the way to San Diego, which is where I grew up, and I'll start fictionalizing. And it's starting to come together, Kaia, but I won't start until I have an ending, and I won't start until I can at least sort of see the history on some level, because I don't like being out in the ocean like a lot of writers, and suddenly they lost their sextant, and then their power just went out, and then now they're in the Bermuda Triangle, in the Sea of Sargasso, and they're going, and now they're stymied or blocked. I'm never blocked. So the novel came out with before Sideways New Zealand is called The Archivist. So it has nothing to do with Sideways, 640 pages. And I wrote it originally as an 8-episode limited series. And then my new publisher, Blackstone, called me up and said, we now do more than audiobooks. We now are a full-scale publisher. What do you have? And I said, well, I just wrote an 8-episode limited series, and it's based on a novel I didn't write, so I want to write it. And they go, okay. And I did the deal with no agent right over the phone. And I wrote that. That's 240,000 words. I wrote it in 90 days, the first draft. But I was cranking. I was levitating, But and as 2 women, it's a tragic love story that morphs into a murder mystery. It all takes place at the University of California, San Diego. But I had that whole thing in my head, and I could wait. So that's where I guess that's where I'm at, Kai. I'm trying to, Spain wasn't happening. Of course, I was back in October, November, and I'm just trying to ideate this. I think it's going to be Miles and a woman on the road trip, not Miles and Jack. I just have to have a woman. Actually, one of the main characters in Sideways New Zealand is a special needs cat. Miles has a special needs cat, and everyone kind of drops off and it's just Miles and his cat.
Well, speaking of Miles, I wanted to say, well, first of all, Paul Giamatti, I don't care what he's in, he will always be Miles in my eyes. He could be on Billions, he will always be Miles. So Miles is aging now in the books. How do you?
No, it's Benjamin Button. He's going back in time.
But how does Miles Raymond, the character, deal with this natural part of life?
Well, and that's a great question. And the last time I was on here, I was also met with some really trenchant questions, except, generally it's usually stupid ones like, do you really hate Merlot? But, I'm really looking inside myself. I mean, I'd like to say I've matured, maybe some. But I also have to find the comedy, and comedy is sometimes in immaturity. It's hard to find it in maturity, I guess. And I don't mean by immaturity that they're acting badly, but there are probably some things that would be unseemly if I did them today as opposed to 20 years ago. So I wouldn't do them, which is why I think having Miles on a road trip with a woman is going to humanize him. That's what I got right now. So I think but maybe he starts drinking. I don't know. And then he
yeah, it depends on what you get. We can be interesting creatures now. Come on now.
Well, I don't drink anymore. I used to, and I sip and spit like crazy. But I went to a dark place after the movie, and so that was a feature of the movie. But not anymore. So how do I bring that in? I mean, is a sober Miles going to really be attractive to the fan base? I don't know. So I can fictionally, not in reality, because then I would never write the book. I can fictionally have him go on a bender, maybe. I don't know. I'm open to ideas, Kai, since you're a writer.
Well, I would love to talk afterwards.
Okay.
Obama.
All right. So some friendships endure for decades and some for a season. So what are some of the lessons Miles has learned from the friendships he has or has had over time that you come to know him? Or since Miles is like your alter ego, what do you most treasure in your friendships?
Well, people, they think I got rich off this thing and I didn't. So we'll start with that. And, we did the play, and it was done in La Jolla with a really big time Tony Award winning director. And it was a huge hit. And he was one of the most miserable fucks I'd ever met. And I can say that. And
keep it real, Rex. That's why we love you on the show. Keep it real.
I'm just short of saying his name, but then I'm going to get a defamation suit because he has.
Wait a minute, Rex, as they say in my neighborhood, keep it 100, not 100, 100.
Okay. So he was miserable, and he's a multimillionaire. He had a musical on Broadway for 15 years, and but anyway, I thought to myself, I come up with these adages, and this one was like, there's one thing money won't buy. And of course, everyone just fills in the blank happiness. And I disagree. I think money will buy you some level of happiness, or can. You can get on a first class flight and go to Tuscany. I don't know, whatever. But there's one thing money won't buy, and that's immortality. You are going to die. And even, I don't care how rich you are, you're Bezos, you can fly up to the moon, get on your fucking, $1 billion yacht, but you are going to die. And so for me, to answer your question, Brock, is the fact that I'm remembered. So I'll give you an example. There's a place right around the corner here called Vintner's Collective. It's an old stone building. It's a multi-winery tasting room. They know me there. They love me there. I sell my books there. I started talking to some women from Fresno. They were in town, just, next thing you know, I was signing 4 books and they were going nuts. Being remembered, etching, that you created something. I mean, I started writing sideways and there was nothing on my computer. There was nothing in my bank account, and there were process servers knocking on my door. And that is not even hyperbole. I had nothing. And here I am, and I'm signing 4 books for 4 nice women from Fresno just started a book club, and they were all going, I don't know, I guess it's, feeling appreciated on that level, that you did something that, that people, it resonates with people, I bared my soul. I think I know I told Doug last time, my ex-wife who won an Academy Award for a short film I wrote, when she read Sideways, she told me to burn it. She went on to become the chair of NYU Tisch School of the Art graduate film, where she still is today. And she's wonderful and everything else.
I'm going to run up on her. Don't worry. I'm going to run up on her and represent. All right.
She says, "Quit telling that story, Rex. It makes me look bad." I said, "Yeah, I'm not, but we're 5 years later. We were the closing night of the New York Film Festival, 2,000 people at the Alice Tully Hall. So I don't know. There are these, if you have just 1 or 2 or 3 people in your life, even just 1 or 2 who really gets who you are and you get who they are, to me, that's enough, because I've lived so much of my life alone, and to have created something that's memorable and they want you to write more, and it's in a play in Latvia and people are laughing. I guess if I never do anything else in my life, that's my legacy. I wish I would be recognized for other things. I guess that's what matters to me the most, is just that because I really suffered to write that book, to be honest with you. Even though it's a comedy, it's comedic, but it has depth and heart. In fact, the director in Riga, Latvia, he was a heavyweight artistic director, says, Rex, every time I go in to check in on the play, it's deeper and more painful. So the comedy is kind of like, he knows where the laughs are coming. It's deeper and more painful. I thought that was, in other words, I'm getting too intellectual here, or I'm not too intellectual because you're more intellectual than me, but it's almost like that I wrote something and it became a movie and now it's a play, and that it inspires or evokes this kind of conversation. That in itself is rewarding to me.
Well, before I get the next question out, audience,
I think I just answered all the next 10 questions. No, okay, I'm kidding.
Audience, let me say here, this man is the epitome of what it is to be persistent and not give up, because many of us have our dreams, our visions, our goals, and we get halfway through it, or we can see the finish line, but we let people who are closest around us destroy that vision. And 2 things happen there. First off, you end up hating the person that told you to stop and go get a job and forget this crazy nonsense. And second off, you end up hating the person who told you to stop and go get a job. So,
well, here's one of my adages, not to cut in on you, Doug.
No, go ahead.
Yet another one. So listen to this one carefully now. No criticism is above criticism itself. Just because somebody says it doesn't make it so.
Right.
So, I don't show anything to anybody. I talk out ideas, but I don't show anything to anybody until I've exhausted it myself. And even then, and you still have to take the criticism. You've got to listen to it. If it's smart, if it resonates with you, but no criticism is above criticism itself. Just because somebody says it doesn't make it so. And I'll tell you, the proof is to go to the Rex Pickett papers at the University of California at San Diego, where my archive is, and look at the 220 rejection letters for Sideways from every major publishing house, some of them 3 or 4 times. They send them to your agent, and your agent forwards them to you. Over 200. One of them, "Dear Mitchell, why did you send me this total fucking piece of shit? Blah, blah, Simon & Schuster." I mean, I agree with you. It's like, I don't even, it's beyond even hating them. It's and the other thing too is, there's persistence, but I don't see it as that. I see it as this is what I wanted to do from age 17, 18 and make movies. It's just telling stories. And I wasn't going to do anything else. So this is what I said to somebody the other day, and they actually, got scared. I said, because they were talking about writing and, their dreams, whatever. I said, if you have a backup plan, you've already sown the seed of failure. And that worried them. I said, no, You got a backup plan, you've sown the seed of failure. Just go do the backup plan and give up on your dream, because you're either all in. This is not an avocation. This is a fucking life. That's it. And it's hard. It's hard. And, you know, and times are changing and tastes are changing and everything else. But I have to stick to my voice and just keep doing it, because I've dealt, I don't know, I've weathered so much rejection. It's we could be here for another hour and a half.
Well, let me ask you this: character development.
Okay.
Over the course of the tetralogy, how did you ensure the character growth and continuity? Thank you.
Well, I mean, in Sideways, the movie's a little different. You know, Alexander made Miles a teacher, but actually in the novel, he's not a teacher. He was like me. He was living on fumes. In Sideways, Oregon, which is now going to be reissued, it was originally vertical, but it was under a bad situation. So I'm so excited that's being reissued, because some people think it's my best book. Miles is now a successful author, and Jack is on the skids, no longer married. And and this was coming from a screenplay I wrote. Miles's mother's had a stroke. She's in an assisted living facility in San Diego, but she wants to be with her sister in Wisconsin. So Miles gets offered to be, this is the fictional part, the guest of honor at the International Pinot Noir celebration, because he loves his Pinot, in Willamette Valley, Oregon. So he rents a handicap-equipped ramp van. His mother's full left side paralyzed. She's got a pot-smoking Filipina caretaker and a Yorkie Terrier and 12 cases of wine and Jack and him, and they take off. They don't all make it, but, you know, it's and so I kind of flipped the switch. I went to where I was at, Doug. I'd become a successful author, and it's funny, it's hedonistic, it's decadent, and then it just shifts and shifts. I like everything in my work to start in one place and go to a completely other place. I want to transform the characters. Sideways Chile, I was offered to come there. I went down there. I ended up realizing the people who paid me were basically, they were crypto Pinochet loyalists, if you know who he is. And that really disconcerted me. And I was ahead of my time, because I said there's going to be a revolution in this country because you have the worst wealth inequality anywhere. And but I'm with the people who are paying me, so I felt very conflicted. But I predicted the revolution in that country, but I couldn't write it in the novel because I wouldn't have got my final payment. So I still think Sideways Chile is a good novel, and the revolution happened. It happened 5 years ago, and they now have a 35-year-old former Communist Party member president. He's like 36 years old. I forget his name. I mean, that country has totally changed. New Zealand was different. I think I had a good friend of mine who knows all my work said it's your most tender novel. And so Miles is on a book tour, and to get the comedy, a friend of mine said, well, why don't they do it in a camper van? And why don't you bring Jack along as his co-captain? And I thought, that's funny. So they got me a camper van, and I drove it all the way up with a friend of mine, all the way up 1,000 miles of New Zealand in the winter. I add the special needs cat because that came from my life, but inevitably, you know, there's a great relationship. His publicist is a 25-year-old Maori woman, 25, and she's never done this before. And Miles and Jack are quite a handful, especially when you put them in wine country. New Zealand has a whole wine country, and I love that character. And I met a Maori woman. I said, will you be the model for the character? And I met this woman. She's actually an actress. And she said, sure. And so I talked to her. And so I drew from her, but I wanted to get down into the culture, you know, and I wanted to see the other side, not just the rich Kiwi winemakers. And I did. And I saw some of the other side. So, you know, Miles has left the known world. He's got a half a hectare of Pinot Noir in the central Otago. But he gets the very first line of the novel is, "Dear Miles, I know you haven't heard from me in 25 years. And I'll leave it." And so now we're off on a journey. So he's on a book tour. It's a bait and switch. He thinks it's the super coach and everything else, or, you know, but no, it's a camper van with Jack. But there's something hanging over him, and he has to come back to California. And I think the next one, honestly, I know I'm talking too much and we're running out of time. I think the next one's got to go more philosophical. I'd love to get into politics. I'm afraid it's going to date the book because I'm just so angry. I wasn't into politics. I mean, I'm left of left, as you can tell. I mean, I'm far out socialist communist, but I'd love to touch on it. I'm just afraid it's going to date my work, because I was listening to you earlier and I'm so angry about what happened in Georgia, and that's just one of 1,000 things I'm really angry with. And the racism toward Fannie Willis, it just really pissed me off. And that thing now is pushed, this country is so corrupt and everything. But I think I'm going to stick to answer your question from the beginning, Kaia. Matters of the soul. I think it's not that I'm trying to avoid politics. I'm not. I'll be the first one at the ballot box, but I also might be the first one to the airport, on an international flight, and never coming back if the wrong person wins, and we know who that is. But because it kind of scares me a little bit. But I don't know. I just is it at the end of the day is. Am I growing sentimental and maudlin by saying it's really ultimately about love and about death? I mean, it isn't, because we come through this ferment of this insane world we're living in right now, and I probably should deal with it, and maybe I will. I just don't. It was such a great question, Kaia, and I may now have to go and get a drink.
Before Kaia answers next question, about 6 weeks ago, and this goes to what you were saying, never give up. We're going into our 3rd year as of
Good
May, and we had a gentleman call from Shanghai, China, and said, "Man, I watch your show every week."
Wow!
So that goes. I mean, you have recharged my battery, because if I'm reaching people in other countries, then I'm doing my job. To that end, Kaia, please fire off the next question. Thank you.
Wow, I really dig, and I get into talking to writers, because I don't think we talk to writers enough anymore. Well, one, I want to say, to write and change landscapes and grow with the character is a hell of a challenge. So I really enjoy this evolution with you. But when we have massive projects, or when I have a massive project as a writer, I go in at some point, like you said, this reflective mode, right? In this evolution of Rex, who have you become as a writer in the writing process?
I want to believe that I have not lost any ability, because when I wrote Sideways, I had a novel that wasn't selling, just like Miles, and it was a mystery novel. And had it sold, there never would have been a Sideways, because they would have bought the next 2 in the series. And so when I wrote Sideways, I bared my soul. I let it all hang out, Kaia. I didn't care. I was willing to, and that's why my ex-wife hated it, because she said, "You're embarrassing yourself," or whatever. I think you have to be willing to be open and honest, and be not so much humble, but almost self-deprecating, to the point of course, you also can find humor in the self-deprecation. I mean, you take Miles, there's a lot of stuff happening. These guys are lying. His best friend is cheating on his fiance, but Miles doesn't care about any of that. He only, he does, but he doesn't. He really only cares about one thing: his novel's going to get published, because that's going to change his life. And when it doesn't, finds out it isn't, that's when he just drinks from the spit bucket and says, "Fuck it," And that's where I was at, and I don't ever want to not be somebody who censors myself in this day and age, particularly. I want to be able to continue. I don't care how embarrassing it is. I just want to be able to bare my soul in my writing, and be able to go to those places that sometimes when you're rereading your draft, you're going, "I don't know, man, that one, that could be pretty tough." But sometimes those are the moments that, right now, Sideways 20, you know what the image we're using? Miles drinking from the spit bucket. because it both represents or embodies everyone's frustration with life. Everyone is frustrated, at different levels, but it's also celebratory and it's cathartic. And I thought, yeah, it's kind of gross. He's drinking from a spit bucket, but when you see it and it's sideways 20, I don't know. That's how I felt. Just like, I'm just gonna, I don't know. I just never saw myself living a normal life,
Right.
but one thing I have done on just one little minor note is I've taken control of my monetization and built a website. I didn't know that things like Shopify and Wix exist and whatever, and getting my books on an author's discount. You buy from me, you get a signature. So you go to rexpickettbooks.com, and I've got all my entire tetralogy will be there in July, but the first 3, Sideways Chile and Sideways New Zealand, are already there, hardcover, whatever. So, and write to me and I'll write you back and I'll inscribe anything, from No Fucking Merlot, which is the most common one. But I hope I never, I don't care how old I am. I hope that I'm never afraid. I want to be fearless all the way to the end. I don't care what it is. I just want to be absolutely fearless. The way you guys are with your show, how you talk about politics. I was listening to it earlier. I love, your take on the world. It's just so right and so accurate. And that, you're fighting the good fight. Unfortunately, literature is I sometimes feel like I'm making arrowheads. I came of age when people were reading and they were reading War and Peace and stuff. I actually did an interview the other day, talk about my politics. And I said, wine is not a democracy. So in order to create a palate, you've got to have a wallet to go up all the way up the ladder to Sonoma, Napa, Burgundy. Those wines are $300, $400, $500. But you know what? Literature and cinema, my 2 loves, are a democracy. We can all read War and Peace. We can all read Jane Austen. We can all see, I don't know, whatever your great movies are, Chinatown or whatever, Citizen Kane. Those are a democracy. We can all develop an aesthetic sensibility, but not with wine, and that bothers me. That wine is not a democracy. And so, yes, if I'm going to be political, that's one place I might be. But I strayed from that. I don't ever want to be someone who doesn't just tell it like it is. I just want to be that person who just tells it like it is. But in the context of fiction, and to be able to entertain and to show people, to characters, and principally me, transformed by the experience of whether it's being in New Zealand or whether it's being in Chile or wherever it is. I want to be I want the art to transform me and turn me into somebody who is, my ex-wife doesn't tell me to burn it because it's smut,
Obama, can you fire off the next one? Because we've got 7 minutes, and guess we were going to cut this show off at 4:59. Next week we're going to rerun this show because I look on this stage here and we have Rex Pickett, we have Dr. Shivers, we have Barack Obama Shaw running for the next governor of the state of California. We're going to rerun this show next week, and we got to keep it under 59 minutes. But what I would like to say is this. I would like to have you come back, all 3 of you, and so we can do another segment maybe in the next month or 2, because this is inspiring. People out there who want to run for politics, Mr. Shaw, who will want to follow up on stories that impact people's families and lives, and people who have a dream, like you, Rex, people who have a dream, but give up on the dream because you get the wrong people around you who say, it'll never work, quit, you might as well get a job, go be a postman, at least you'll get a retirement. So right. on that note, Mr. Obama, can you wrap this up with the last question? Thank you.
Yes, yes. And I want to say thank you, Rex, for being yourself and believing in who you are and your authenticity and honesty. It never gets old.
Thank you.
It never gets old. Yeah. And so I thank you. I saw your movie and I found out about it and I was like, wow, I really feel this this guy.
I hope you get to see the play someday, because the play, and this is from the big director who's really miserable. He said, Rex, I love the movie, but the play is richer and more emotionally complex. The women characters are bigger and stronger, and it's actually funnier too. So anyway, Go ahead. Ask the last question. I didn't mean to say.
Awesome. So Sideways, New Zealand. So why did you choose New Zealand as the backdrop for the final series, and how did you ensure that the series concluded on a satisfying note for longtime readers without giving too much of away, to spoil, not spoiling it, to where they can, for those not caught up that are caught up as yet?
Well, I mean, just really quickly, I was approached about 3 years ago from somebody from New Zealand. He's a huge Sideways fan, and said, hey, would you want to bring your characters here? So the conversation began. In fact, I forgot to tell you this. There's a filmmaker in South Africa. He's made a feature film, a black man, and it was on Netflix as a hit, Fabian Medea. And he called me up and he wants me to come to South Africa, to Cape Town, go through their wine country and recreate Miles and Jack as two black dudes on a wine trip or whatever. And I thought, okay. And we've been talking. He just got back from the Cannes Film Festival. He's raised some money. I'm going to go down and hopefully write a screenplay with him. So it's not over yet, Brock. I mean, so New Zealand, I got a phone call, and then they made it happen. They brought enough to the table, and I said, I'm open to it. And it's a huge wine region, it doesn't always have to be about wine. And I just, like I said, I signed a post Sideways New Zealand trilogy deal with my publisher, Blackstone. And the next book is going to be, I think I'm going to call it Sideways 20, because I'm on a road trip to the San Ynez Valley, which is where the film was shot, which is about 400 miles south of where I'm talking to you right now. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I think there's going to be some soul searching in this one.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, why should Marvel be the only ones can do the same Spider-Man movie over and over again with a newer version of it? Another Mary Jane, another Spider-Man. Hey, we can have another Miles.
Well, I mean, and think about it. Detective novels. The great Raymond Chandler has Philip Marlowe. Of course, he doesn't age in novel after novel, but he does mature when you get to The Long Goodbye. So why can't, and by the way, there's a literary analog to this, is Richard Ford, the sports writer, which came out in the 80s, and he has a character, Frank Bascom. He's written 4 sequels to that with the Frank Bascom character, and he has not exhausted him, because he's really, what we're doing is we're mining, Brock, we're mining our life. I'm mining my soul, and it's solipsistic, and it can be even considered narcissistic. But if I do it right and give you back some sense of where you're invested in me and the feeling, and you learn something from it, then it's worth continuing to mine my soul and mine Miles. And hopefully they'll make a sequel movie one day. Good grief.
You got it, Rex, because you've earned people's trust. People trust you. So whatever you do is going to be successful.
Thank you.
Mr. Rex Pickett, Dr. Shivers, Mr. Barack B. Obama, I want to thank you all for coming on the show today. We're going to do a after Instagram to finish up what we have not talked about. But audience, this is why it is impactful and empowering to have podcasts. To that end, tune in Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 7 p.m. East Coast Time. And I don't know what China time is, but we are also being heard in China. Network on YouTube, Facebook, and live on Instagram. Meet us after the show on Instagram Live. Art Blacksher new segment, Doug's podcast wrap up. Remember, together, we can listen, we can learn, and we can share, because I know you care. This is Doug Blacksher and Dr. Ashley Coleman coming back soon of the Black Business Roundtable. God bless and good night.
Thank you for having me.